it up last time. I had to record the other class yesterday because I messed up the recording of you guys the day before, which is why I do it generally on a blue day. So in case I mess up, I've got the green day to do it. All right? So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead and take your notes out. We're going to continue looking at the situation in Europe once upon a time, a long, long time ago, when there were bones in churches. Are there still bones in churches? Are there still ghosts in car commercials? Yes, there are. That was what? That was a zombie apocalypse. Yeah, that wasn't a ghost. That was mean. That was mean. I did that the other class too. Set it up perfectly. And yeah, some of them were like, ah! So even people who had seen it before. Yeah. Ah! So, yeah, no, I mean, it's like, you have to be careful because, like, how many of you guys are like, you like to do stuff like that? You like to scare people? There we go. Okay. How many of you guys like to be scared? Okay, so you're like, oh, okay, there you go. So sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. I remember, I'll tell you a couple stories. My little sister, I was like, oh, I'm going to sneak up on her while she's like getting ready to brush her teeth and so forth. So she was in the bathroom getting ready to brush her teeth, and I like, wah! You know, I'm being an obnoxious older brother. And she had a cup of water in her hand, and that water ended up, on me. Yeah, she like pointed it at me. But I still tried that when I was at college. I was going to like do a prank and scare my roommate, which I saw, like the way it was set up, I could see that he was on his way up to the room. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll get in the doorway right next to our room. And then as he walks by that doorway onto our room, I'll jump out and scare him. So that's what I did. What I didn't notice is that one of the flightiest people in the entire dorm, one of the people most susceptible to being scared, was following behind him about like 5 or 6 paces. And so I didn't notice that. And so when I jumped out behind him and scared him, this girl was really scared that I had jumped out, and she let out a huge scream, which really scared me because I didn't see her coming. There's a lesson for you, right? What comes around goes around. So, yeah. Hopefully nobody will try and sneak up and like, jump out and scare me, because that would be really, really dangerous and sad. Sorry. Anyway, but yeah, if we have time, sometimes in the past I'll like clue up the Brazilian like videos. We'll see if we have time for that. Maybe by Halloween. Would you like that? Yeah, you're like, it's like work, work, work. So what are we going to do today? Work, 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 work. And we got a quiz coming up after the break. For you guys, it's going to be the Friday, the 30th, okay, of October. We've already did one of the questions, so you got some analysis, some techniques about how to figure out how to do that, right? What we're going to do here, let's see if we got this queued up right. There we go. Let's get back to the issue at hand. Where last we left off, we were talking about various different things like relics in churches and the importance of church buildings. And why was it, Marin, that the Pope decided that they needed St. Peter's Basilica in Rome? Really big, really beautiful. So what? I mean, is it like church envy? Yeah, there was a little bit of a church envy. It wasn't the Hagia Sophia. Let's go ahead and clue that one back up here, because that's right in here. Hagia Sophia, yeah. Wasn't that a Christian church? Yeah. Was it a Catholic church? No, it was not. Eastern Orthodox. So you get a bit of a rivalry there. So the Pope, who is not the head of the Eastern Orthodox Church, they've got another person who's the head of that church. The Pope wanted to make sure that he had a very, very big, beautiful church in Rome. And he will get great architects, and he's going to need, I don't know, does he have enough money to pull that off? Blake, does he have enough money to pull that off? Why not? Okay, yeah, the church makes a fair amount of money, but a lot of it had already been dedicated to other things. So you have to like come up with new resources. So write this down. We're going to be looking at this issue of new sources of money coming into the Catholic Church. Okay, think of it as like a fundraiser, right? Think of it as a fundraiser. How many of you guys? I'm kind of curious. How many of you guys ever like maybe when you were younger? And you had some brilliant idea about like what money should be spent on something, and your parents suggested, well, why don't you just set up, I don't know, like a lemonade stand or like, selling baked goods. Anybody? Go out there. Anybody? Did any of you guys? Okay. What do you sell? Lemonade. What do you sell? Snow cones. What did you charge? You don't remember? Was it a lot more than what the actual cost of buying the materials was, or did your parents just like give this stuff to you for free? So go out on the curb and so forth. You got a lot of kids in our neighborhood that are like setting up for lemonade and all kinds of cookies and various different things. Nobody else did that, right? So if you have some, how many of you have an idea of what from your parents of like what they should spend money on for you? Yeah, nobody, never. You've never had some idea of like what you want your parents to spend money on for you? You're like, Mother dear, Father dear, I love you so dearly. If you want to spend money on me for my birthday, that's fine. But it doesn't matter that much. Is that your approach? Would you be disappointed if you didn't get a birthday present? You would? Why don't you just write them a note and say, I don't want you to take those hard-earned money and spend it on me. No? Raise your hand if you would do that. Raise your hand and be like, it's my birthday. It comes along once a year, and I want something. And if I don't get, anyway, whatever. So the Pope has got to figure out a way to get something, and so he's going to use a fundraising technique known as indulgences. All right, let's get into the details of this. This is very important that we understand all of the ins and outs of indulgences. Some of you guys had a little bit of a sense of this before. Maybe you picked up on it before. You had the idea, write this down if you haven't already, that an indulgence is basically a piece of paper. And it's signed by the Pope, or on behalf of the Pope, somebody who works for the Pope, with permission from the Pope, so they've got the authority to sign it on behalf of the Pope. And what does it do? Raise your hand if you can tell me, what does it do? Yes? Yakov, I remember you had it last time. Go for it. Yeah, so it's like forgiveness. That's the key thing. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. Forgive me if you don't know what forgiveness is. Have I explained it to you yet? Oh, my bad. Please forgive me. I've done something bad. The idea behind forgiveness is you've done something bad. Actually, and maybe that's just the way you are. Original sin. You've got sin. You were born with it. You exhibit it. It happens. Sin's a big deal. S-I-N. Sin. So people have sin. And what is it about sin that's a problem for people? Can you go to heaven? Can you be in eternal company with God if you've got sin hanging all over you? It's like, wipe your feet, okay? I mean, seriously. Get that sin off of you, wipe your feet, or you can't come into heaven. Does that help the analogy? So, actually, see if you can identify this. I think we did a pretty good job in the other class. I'm not sure if we did so in here. Raise your hand if you can tell me, as far as where you've picked up from whatever source and so forth, within Christianity, what is the ultimate, like, get rid of sin method? Praying. Prayer is very good. Prayer is a very big part within sin. Within church and Christianity and so forth. What is the one thing that within Christianity they say, this gets rid of sin? What? Belief. Belief in what? There we go. So within the Christian framework, go ahead and write this down. Within the Christian framework, and this is going to be very interesting and very controversial, because some people are going to go, that's enough. Other people are going to go, we need more. Within the Christian framework, you have this very important person, Jesus. According to Christianity, Jesus, Son of God. According to Christianity, Jesus, what happened to him? Dead, right? We saw the art, the crucifixion of Jesus. Jesus taken off the cross. Jesus put in the tomb. Jesus comes back to life. According to Christianity, what did the death of Jesus take away sin. There we go. So what the Christian message is, Jesus died to remove sin from people. And of course, then you get into this issue of like, well, how do you get access to that removal of sin? Is belief enough? Is other things required? That's going to be, keep an eye on that issue. That's going to be a really pivotal issue within the Christian framework. But the idea is like the ultimate sin relief system comes with Jesus, who got rid of all the sin. Got that? And if you get rid of all the sin, where do you got to go? In heaven, right? Remember the Michelangelo, the Last Judgment? You had Jesus right here, and above and around him, all of the people going up to heaven. And what about the lower part of that piece of art? Where were those people going? Not to heaven, yeah, to heck. Yeah, I love that. To heck and gone, all right? And it didn't look too pleasant for those guys. That's a basic belief system. It's like, it's very important within Christianity, that concept of heaven, eternal life with the Father in a very, very positive surroundings. Okay? So, where does that fit within this fundraising system? An indulgence says, written by the Pope, your sin is forgiven. Write that down. Your sin is forgiven if you have a piece of paper from the Pope that says your sin is forgiven. Got it? If the Pope's name is on it, does that seem like that's pretty like authoritative? It's a pretty powerful thing? Because after all, what is the Pope? Within the Catholic belief system, what's the Pope? Is he just one priest, or is he like the top priest? He's the top priest. So if the Pope's name is on that piece of paper, that says it. So, how do you get the piece of paper? What do you just like say, Pope? Well, you can't just go up to the Pope because he's in Rome. Write this guy's name down. Johann Tetzel. Can you just walk? Johann Tetzel went up into German-speaking areas. He was working for the Pope. He went up in German-speaking areas with a whole bunch of indulgences, a whole bunch of pieces of paper signed by the Pope. And if you wanted forgiveness of sin, if you wanted an indulgence, a piece of paper signed by the Pope saying you're forgiven of your sins, what do? Can I have that piece of paper, please? You have to buy it. I know it says right there in the headline. Write that down. If you wanted forgiveness, you had to pay for it. You got that? That was the fundraising method. Do people want forgiveness? Uh-huh. Why do they want forgiveness? I mean, that's a big one. Yeah, to go to heaven. I mean, is heaven a better place than the other place you're talking about? Yes. I mean, is there a high motivation on the part of people who believe in heaven and hell and forgiveness and sin and all that kind of stuff? Is there a high motivation to buy one of those things? Yes. Write that down. And Johann Tetzel, oh my gosh, he was a salesman. Sometimes when I have more time, I like show some of the Billy Mays videos. You don't remember Billy Mays. He would get on television and he could sell ice to somebody up in Alaska. I mean, he was amazing. He was quite the salesman. Johann Tetzel, he could sell indulgences. Write this down. He sold a lot of indulgences. This is going to be a fact. He was a really good salesperson. And the Pope was happy with him and others because now the Pope's going to have a lot more money to build a church. And look, there's the proof. The church got built. St. Peter's Basilica got built, in part because of the effective sale of indulgences by people like Johann Tetzel and others. So, think about that. Let's say I'm Johann Tetzel. I come into a community in Germany, and I walk up to somebody. I need a volunteer. I want to sell you an indulgence. And she says, why should I buy an indulgence? I think that there must be some reason. Are you free of sin? Do you want, here you go, do you want to go to heaven? This piece of paper is your ticket to heaven. Do you want it? If you want it, you're going to have to hand over some money. And literally, he had a catchy phrase. Translated loosely into English, as soon as a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory or hell springs. So in other words, you pay the money, bada bing, there it goes. Now, write this down. Sometimes, Johann Tetzel got a little bit creative on this one, because sometimes you might go up to someone and they might say, they might go, well, I haven't done any sin lately, and so forth. He's like, don't worry about it. Write this down. You can buy indulgences for other people. You can buy indulgences for other people, because the people who are very carrying good lives and so forth, they care about their own life, but you know what they typically also do? They care about other people. Do you know somebody in your own life, and your friends or your family, that's just not quite that good? Don't you care about them? Don't you want them to also go to heaven? Do you see the motivation? Write that down. People would buy indulgences for other family members. Oh, and here's one. Let's get this figured out. You ready? Because this is going to introduce another concept. Sometimes you might have a dead family member, and they didn't quite get it right in their lifetime, and you're wondering if they're in heaven, or if they're in hell, or, write this down, or if they're in purgatory. Purgatory was an interesting concept, a place that was developed within, an understanding developed within the Catholic Church. And it's not heaven, but it's not quite hell. It's like a long waiting room. And people who die, who don't have everything taken care of for them so they can go to heaven, they may end up in purgatory. And the idea in purgatory, he wished this himself, in purgatory, they're supposed to go through kind of a process of removing sin that's like still stuck to them and work it through. You're like, I'm still not getting this. Probably one of the best analogies that I can make would be, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Charles Dickens' story, The Christmas Carol. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Charles Dickens' Carol. Who's the main character in that story? Scrooge, right? Is Scrooge a good guy or a bad guy at the beginning of the story? If I were to say, you're a Scrooge, am I insulting you or giving you a compliment? Oh, I like that. How would I possibly be giving you a compliment by referring to you as Scrooge from the Charles Dickens story of Christmas Carol? You don't know. Okay. Can anyone help? How is it possible that he could be referred to as a Scrooge as a compliment? I think we need to back up a little bit. You don't know anything about the story? Well, let's see. Raise your hand if you can tell me something about Scrooge at the beginning of the story. Yes? He's rich, okay? So he's got a lot of money. Is that it? What else? Oh, yeah. He only cares about himself. Very selfish. Very greedy, right? And so people, he's got a worker, Bob Cratchit, who's got a family, including little tiny Tim, who's a bit lame. He's got a crutch. And Bob Cratchit is like, can I have the day off for Christmas? And Scrooge is like, bah, humbug, Christmas. I mean, he's just a real jerk, right? He's a real jerk in that story. So he starts off really bad. He eventually ends up pretty good. Because by the end of the story, he kind of comes around and he's like, I'm going to keep Christmas in my heart and do nice things. And he gives Bob Cratchit a raise. And he makes sure that Bob Cratchit's little boy, Tiny Tim, receives the medical attention that he needs. So that would be positive. If somebody calls you a Scrooge, you're like, which Scrooge? The one at the end is kind and helpful. Just like the Grinch who stole Christmas. If I call you a Grinch, is that good or bad? Exactly. At the beginning of the story, the Grinch, what did you have, the Grinch who stole Christmas? Is he nice at the beginning? No, he's a jerk. He's going to steal things. How is he at the end? He's good, yeah. He like returns everything, even the Who hash, and he sings with Cindy Lou Who, Avu Dor, anyway, whatever. So what happens to Scrooge in the midst of this story that turns it around for Scrooge? Yes? People come pay him a visit. What kind of people come pay him a visit? Yes? Spirits, yeah, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, the ghost of Christmas future. Which one was the most scary? The past? No, it's the future, because the future one points out, you dead, and nobody cares about you when you die. And Scrooge is all freaking out going, oh no, I don't want that to be the case. I'm going to change. Who was the first one that visited him? This is the Muppets version. Marley and Marley. Yes? His old business partner. His old business partner, Jacob Marley, had died, I don't know, like 5 or 10 years before Scrooge was visited by these ghosts. In the concept of that story, Marley was dead, and Marley had chains. And Marley would say, these are the chains that I forged in life, and now I'm carrying them with me. My soul is carrying them with me in death. Why did Marley come to visit Scrooge, to warn Scrooge that you, Scrooge, have longer, heavier chains than I do because I died before you did, and you're in big trouble there, Scrooge. You need to really get right. Why did he do that? Because Scrooge could become a better person. Would that help Marley at all? The concept of this is, with purgatory, and actually even with living Catholics and so forth, is you do something bad, you will be given a direction. And in purgatory, what you do is you work to you focus on removing all the sins that are still stuck to you. So, in a sense, that's kind of like what Marley was doing. He was lightening his load by helping out Scrooge. Okay? So let's go all the way back to Tetzel. Tetzel will come up and say, remember that uncle that was kind of a jerk that died like 5 years ago? You want to hope that he's not in hell. Probably he's in purgatory. And you know what can help him out in purgatory? Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You could do him a big favor. What favor could you do him? Buy him an indulgence. Write that down. You can buy dead people indulgences. Now, Tetzel was really kind of stretching it because before that, there wasn't too many indulgences that were being sold on the basis of like helping get dead people out of jail. Excuse me, not out of jail, but out of purgatory, like jail, I suppose. Does that make sense? Do you see why this guy is such a good salesman? He's like throwing paper here, there, and everywhere. And it's like, the Pope's like, man, wow, you're selling a lot of indulgences. I'm like, yeah, well, everybody wants to go to heaven, or they want their friends to go to heaven, and so forth and so on. Anybody see any problem with this sales technique? Anybody see any potential problem with this sales technique? Yeah. You're going to what? You're going to run out of paper? Oh, that's not a problem. Just make more paper. It's like, here, give me some scraps of paper. And this is what the Pope's signature looks like. Here, I got a fresh indulgence for you. Anybody? Anybody? Yes? Well, yeah, and here's the deal. Put this down also. Sometimes, it's like, well, I haven't done any sins lately. Don't worry about it. I'll sell you an indulgence for the stuff you're going to do like next month. Oh my gosh. It's like having a get out of jail free card, so then when you ultimately do something wrong, you just whip out the indulgence and you're good to go. Seriously, write that down. He was selling indulgences for future sins. Because within the belief system, it was like you would as long as you're alive, you're probably going to have some sin at some point in time. Again, it's like, whoop, there goes that thought. Oh, I did that. Where's that Johann Tetzel? Oh, wait. He sold me a stack of indulgences for future sins. Would people be motivated to buy those? Yes. So you could buy an indulgence to get rid of past sin. You could buy an indulgence to get rid of your relative's sins. You could buy an indulgence to get rid of your dead relatives or friends' sins. You could buy an indulgence to get rid of the sin that you were going to do in the future. I mean, he's got the whole thing covered. And it was all endorsed by the Pope. Okay? I'm going to lay out some potential criticisms of this. Here's the first one. It's economic. Write this down. It's an economic criticism. This area right up here is German-speaking Europe, right? And that was where Johann Tetzel did a lot of his sales. Right down here is the Pope, okay? As a result of Johann Tetzel going through, and others, going through and selling lots and lots of indulgences, where is all that money from German speakers buying indulgences? Where is it headed? Where's it headed? It's heading to Rome for all the building project that the Pope is helping to oversee. You got that? So as a result of this, make sure you write this down. There's less money in the German areas because it's heading to Rome to build this big church. Does that make sense? And you're like, well, that was the whole point, right? We have this fundraising thing, so there's less, we're going to see a shift of money. Well, who doesn't like to see a shift of money? Think of it this way. Let's give you a real clear analogy here. Let's say, I don't know, raise your hand if you have siblings. Okay, you got siblings. You got brothers, sisters, so forth. All right. And they've got birthdays too. What if your parents just sort of said, I don't know, how many of you guys have a birthday coming up, but you've got a sibling that's having a birthday before you? Raise your hand if you've got a sibling that's having a birthday before your birthday. So the next birthday in your family is not yours, it's somebody else's. Well, let's say your parents walked into the room and said, well, we only have so much money for birthdays, for birthday presents. And you know what? I'm just thinking, let's just, it's who is it? Niccolo Machiavelli, it's better to be loved. I want to be loved, so I'm just going to give a really big present to that younger or older brother or sister of yours. Sorry, there's not going to be much for you. You guys okay with that? How many guys are like, yes, my sibling deserves all of that? Yes? How many guys are like, no, I deserve all of that? Okay. All right. So here's the deal. Write this down. If there's more money going to Rome for the big new building, there's less money in the German areas. Do you understand? It's like the analogy I gave you. If there's more money going to your brother or sister's birthday present, there's less money available for yours. You can't just create money out of thin air. The people who were making that complaint, ready, were leading German princes and German church leaders. They're not happy to see Johann Tetzel come through and raise so much money because they're looking at that going, now there's not going to be as much money for the stuff that we want to spend it on, for the churches in our area, for the projects that we want to spend on. Do you understand that? That's the economic complaint. And that's an important one. It doesn't have anything really much to do with religion. It has to do with we only got so much money, and so if so much of it's heading to Rome, not as much of it is heading to our stuff that we want to do, our churches and our projects and our things. And they're like, oh, we should have hired Johann Tetzel to do our fundraiser. I mean, that would have worked out very well. You got that? Does anyone see any other problem potentially with the sale of indulgences? A piece of paper that says you're forgiven. That what? In fact, some people, let's get to them. Oh, yeah. Some people, let's get to this guy right here. Jump back for a moment. We'll go ahead and introduce you to him right now. Martin Luther is a priest and a teacher at a university in a place called Wittenberg, and it's located right up here in the German-speaking area. This whole big brown thing is what? The Holy Roman Empire. It's got an emperor, but he's not really that powerful. But it's a Catholic area. And then there's the Pope way down there in Rome. That's where Martin Luther's from. You're like, why is he bothering showing me where on the map it is? It's actually going to be very important as we go through here. Because what Martin Luther, which is the person that Martin Luther Sr. named after his son, Martin Luther King. You heard Martin Luther King? Yeah. What Martin Luther says something, write this down, it's going to irritate the Pope. And I'll just make this clear right now. We haven't even gotten to what Martin Luther says yet. But just Martin Luther says something, it's going to irritate the Pope. I mean, really irritate the Pope. I haven't even gotten to it yet, but I can just tell you, it's going to be an irritation to the Pope. And if you say something irritating to the Pope, is that a problem? Does the Pope just sort of go, at that time period, does the Pope just sort of go, agree to disagree? No. In fact, sometimes the Pope's like, come here. Let me have a conversation. Is there anybody in your life that said, come here? Let's have a conversation. You're like, you're dreading that conversation. You're like, you can picture in the mind that this is not necessarily going to be good. And they don't have to shout at you. They're just like, I'm disappointed. You're like, it's like, don't even do that. Don't even play with that. I just want to give you an example of, if a Pope says, I'm disappointed, come here, we need to talk. No, come here. A little closer. Come here, and you're like backing up and go, is the door open? Can I run? Will the neighbors take me in? Will I be reported? Let me just show you what happened one time. This is Jan Hus. Write this down. Jan Hus. This is before Martin Luther says what he's about to say that really upsets the Pope, and we haven't even gotten to it yet. But Jan Hus said something, and wasn't even as in your face as what Martin Luther is going to say about the Pope. And Jan Hus actually, he was from a little bit closer to Rome. And the Pope's like, yeah, come here. Let me have a word with you. Very disappointing. What you've been saying, very disappointing. We need to make that disappointment go away. In flames. This is what happened to Jan Hus. What do you call somebody who disagrees with the all-powerful religious authority of the church? Anybody know? Yes, go for it. Heretic, perfect. A heretic. Within a religious belief system, if somebody espouses some views that go against the accepted views, and this would be the Pope's views and a lot of views held by other people, you're a heretic. And sometimes to make an example of that heretic so that other people don't go, ooh, that sounded like a good idea, let me talk about that, they burn them alive at the stake. You understand that? Oh, and you're like, well, won't other people come along and go, wow, I worship the bones of that? Oh, wait, there are no bones. Part of the reason they burn the whole thing is so that there's no bones. I mean, who cares about bones? In those days, did they care about bones? Yes, they care about bones. I mean, literally, if you're wondering, I don't know, who's one of the nastiest modern villains that attacked the United States of America? Osama bin Laden, did we ever get him? He was the guy behind the 9/11 attacks. Anybody know, did we get him? Yeah, what did we do with him? You're like, well, we killed him. What did we do with his body? Did we return it to his family? Yeah. Dropped it in the ocean. Why did we drop it in the Indian Ocean? So no one can find him. And if no one can find him to revere his body or anything like that, we denied them that opportunity. The Pope denied anybody who thought of actually following the ideas of Jan Hus by burning his body completely. Whew. So, let's move to Martin Luther. He's going to be writing some things down about the indulgences and Johann Tetzel, and he's actually going to put those ideas down, 95 of those ideas. It's called the 95 Thesis. Write it in your notes. 95 Thesis, criticisms of the way things are going in the Catholic Church, and he's going to put them on paper, And he's going to do it in, let's see, when was that? 1517. A very important date. In fact, it was this month. In fact, it's a memorable date in this month. What is the most memorable date, the most important date in the month of October? It was October 31st. Write it down. October 31st, 1517. He nailed his 95 Theses on the door of the main church in the city of Wittenberg, which was, by the way up here in the northern part. That's significant because, spoilers, when the Pope finds out about it, he's not going to be happy. He's going to be like, can you come here for a minute? What is Martin Luther going to do? Stay there. Stay away from potential trouble. He doesn't want to be burned. So after he puts the 95 Theses up on the door, a couple things happen. He goes and does trick-or-treating. Just kidding. No, he's not involved in trick-or-treating. Okay? What other things happen? Oh, somebody takes it down. They take it to a printing press. Write that down. They take it to a printing press, and they make scads and scads and scads of copies of it. 1517. Yeah, so in your handout, on the notes I gave you, this is like, we're starting to get to that bottom section there. We're transitioning into the Protestant Reformation. It starts in Wittenberg, October 31st, 1517, when Martin Luther puts on the door 95 Theses. All right, now let's get to some of the gist of what is going on in the 95 Theses. And let's see if you can pick up on why the Pope thinks this is bad. First of all, Martin Luther starts out life, he's going to be an attorney. Who knew? And then he became a teacher. Oh, weird. Somebody who starts out as going to be an attorney and ends up as a teacher? I mean, who would have ever thought of that? He's actually a teacher within the Catholic faith. He becomes a monk. Write that down. He becomes a monk and a teacher. He's a very smart guy. And actually, he's really impressed. He gives up the whole, law thing, because that was mostly his dad's idea anyway. And he's really impressed. He gives his life to God. He says, I'm going to dedicate myself to God. It was in the midst of a really violent thunderstorm. And he literally is like, I'm not going to survive this thunderstorm. I give my life to you, God. I will dedicate my life to you. And he lived through the thunderstorm, and he became a monk. Okay? And he's a monk more than any other monk. He works and works and works and works. He's doing this and studying this. He goes to Rome on a pilgrimage. And when he gets to Rome, he's like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And he's really confused because he sees some of the stuff I've already told you. Corruption and a lot of, things that just don't seem really like the way people are supposed to live this life. He sees a lot of waste of money, and he's just really, really not happy with it. So he goes back, he's in Wittenberg, he's teaching, and guess who comes to town? Johann Tetzel. Write it down. Martin Luther sees Johann Tetzel coming through town, selling his indulgences. You got sin taken away from you now and for later and for your friends, and purgatory ain't going to keep nobody down as long as you just keep that money coming in. Martin Luther was furious. Because here's what Martin Luther understands about Christianity. His view was quite different. He would look at, let me see, what is the book called that deals with Christianity? The Bible, yeah, because he knew how to read the Bible. He read the Bible and he's like, as far as I understand, write this down, Martin Luther would say, as far as I understand, Jesus died to take away sin for all people, for all time, and that is a gift nobody deserves, but they get it. Not because they pay money. How do they get that gift? According to what Martin Luther sees in the Holy Bible? By believing. That's it. How much money has to go over to a Johann? Nothing. Nothing. That's what Martin Luther says. If you want to have forgiveness of sins, you just need to Believe. And so, you know what Martin Luther says about some guy coming through town selling a bunch of like pieces of paper with the Pope's signature on there? He says, that is not good. Write that down. He is like, that is not good at all. Who would do such a thing? Who would claim to have the authority to take away sin when Martin Luther says, hey, as I read it right here, all you got to do is believe. You don't have to write out a check or throw in a coin or do nothing like that and so forth. Who would do something like that? A pope who wants to raise money for a building? Oh, he didn't stop there. Martin Luther's just getting going, and the Pope's going to get really, really upset when he gets the whole version of Martin Luther's understanding of things. So first of all, he says, the Pope is wrong for doing that. Wrong for teaching something that is different than Martin Luther's understanding of the Bible. In fact, he says, who made him the head of the church? I don't see anything in there that says you get to have the authority over all Christianity. Whoa, that's getting to be a pretty big thing. In fact, Martin Luther's just getting started. By the time Martin Luther gets his whole idea out there, he says basically, look, if you claim to have the authority of Christ on earth right now, and I don't see it in there, yes, you know, you're the Bishop of Rome, and the original Bishop of Rome was Peter, one of the disciples, but that doesn't mean necessarily that every Bishop of Rome, every follower, person that came into that position, Bishop of Rome is the same as being Pope, every person has that authority. He says, I don't see it there. Get this. And if you claim, Pope, to have that authority, and you don't, you know what that makes you? This is big. If you're not with Christ, and the way he sets things up, you're against him. What's another word for somebody who is against, a leader who is against Christ? Luther called him Antichrist. You write that down. Ooh. Do you see a little contention going on here? Luther's like, you don't have the authority. You're using the church wrong. These pieces of paper are worthless. Boom! Do you see some problems going on here? When that kind of message gets down to the Pope, what do you suppose the Pope's got an idea for Luther? Ooh, we're going to have a warm day. Instead of John Hus here, who was burned, we're going to have Luther getting burned. Next time we'll learn who is going to protect Martin Luther. This guy right here, John Frederick, there's Luther. He's got his back. More on that story next time. Okay? All right. Right here. Remember,